Every once in a while, I'll play a totally random game that leaves me thinking, that was pretty cool, I really liked that. I recently had one of these moments with Asobo Studios' A Plague Tale: Innocence. I heard nothing about this title only up until a few days before it released. I was browsing YouTube one night with a friend, and a trailer for this game popped up before the video we were watching. I thought it looked cool. It felt like some kind of rat-based survival horror game with added stealth elements. After watching the trailer, I immediately looked the game up and watched some more videos on it, and what I saw piqued my interest. I mean, this game has a trailer where Sean Bean is reading William Blake at you in the most intense way. If you can get a legend like him to rep your game, you must be doing something right. Like I said, all of this happened only a few days before the game released, so I didn't have that much more time to wait to play this game. I also looked up the developers behind this game, and this surprised me because the people making this game, Asobo Studio, their last original IP came out in 2009, that being the racing game Fuel. Ever since then, the studio has only ever made movie tie-in games like Toy Story and Up, and they've also assisted with other game studio projects like Ubisoft's The Crew. I'll be honest, this worried me for the quality of Plague Tale, but I was still curious and was looking forward to playing the game and judging it for myself. I wasn't able to find much info on this game's budget or development, but just from watching the trailers, I got a very Hellblade vibe from the visuals and overall presentation, which probably means budget game, somewhere between indie and AAA in terms of its production. This got me more excited because I feel these types of games are important for the games industry. Being a more affordable but content-rich experience is something I'd love to see more devs do in the future. Outside of Hellblade, there aren't many games like this nowadays. After finishing Plague Tale, I felt like I should make a video on it. I think it's pretty interesting, and its concept isn't something we see a lot in video games. Anyway, I think it's time we finally got into this video proper. So yeah, let's take a look at A Plague Tale: Innocence. Plague Tale is a story-focused stealth puzzle game set in France at the beginning of the 100 Years' War. You play as Amicia de Rune, the daughter of a noble family living in the French countryside. The game starts simple enough with Amicia and her father out in the woods, bonding and playing with the family dog, then returning home where we meet the rest of Amicia's family, her mother and her younger brother, Hugo. We learn that Hugo has some sort of disease and that Amicia's mother has been trying to find treatment through alchemy for years. After speaking with your mother and Hugo, Amicia hears a commotion outside. The Inquisition has arrived looking for Hugo. The Inquisition leader mercilessly kills Amicia's father, and his troops begin raiding the village. After meeting up with your mother and doing a pretty lengthy stealth tutorial, the de Rune children escape together, leaving their mother behind. The first half of this game, the first 8 levels, are very linear. There's a lot of setup in the story department with meeting characters and learning the various gameplay mechanics, like using your sling to attack enemies or strike parts of the environment for puzzles, and gaining items that you can use to assist in stealth situations. In the first half, Amicia and Hugo will have to navigate through towns and military camps looking for certain people who can potentially help find a cure for Hugo's condition, all while being hunted down by the Inquisition. Dealing with human enemies is a standard affair. At the start of your journey, you have very little choice but to sneak around them, using rocks and other types of objects to draw them out of their patrol patterns so you can slip by undetected. The stealth is very by-the-numbers video game stuff. There are, of course, a few small things that Plague Tale does to make its stealth gameplay stand out just a little bit from the pack. As you play, you'll be acquiring new items that can either be thrown by hand or whipped using the sling. Throwing items has less range than using them with the sling, but using the sling makes a lot of noise and will alert any nearby guards. Throwing is completely silent. I found myself in a few situations where alternating between these two methods was vital in progressing through an area. Effectively using the correct items quickly made me feel really cool, like a quick-thinking master of stealth or something like that. For the human enemies, slinging rocks at them is what you'll be doing to inflict damage. If a guard isn't wearing a helmet, 1 stone to the head will kill them, every time. Body shots only slow them down. Having guards go down with 1 hit to the head might seem like your character is a little overpowered. And yeah, you kind of are if you play well, but if a guard spots you and makes his way over to you, that'll spell death for Amicia. Obviously, playing as a young girl, you will die with 1 hit if a guard grabs you. This also goes for ranged attackers. You'll need to keep an eye out for spear masters and archers. Thankfully, if you die, load times are fast, so dying and reloading a checkpoint is reasonably quick. The game is very forgiving in that regard. I should mention that later in the game, you get a Resident Evil style defense weapon that you can use on charging soldiers to take them out once they grab you. The second type of gameplay is the puzzle side of things, dealing with and navigating around the hordes of rats you'll be encountering throughout the cities and forests you'll be exploring. Let me just say quickly that the rat tech in this game is awe-inspiring. Up to 5,000 rats can be on screen at one time, and seeing them all over the place is horrifying. Like, they will completely cover the ground. It's crazy. I was initially going to call the rats enemies, but they don't discriminate. These little bastards are just hungry. They'll eat anyone that gets in their way. That means you or an Inquisition soldier. In the first few levels, the rats aren't really a threat. They're more in the background, but after the introductory chapters, they begin to play a much more significant role in the story and gameplay. Rats are scared of fire and bright light sources. There are many simple navigation puzzles where you'll be lighting up torches, braziers, and other flammable light sources and moving between them to stay alive. In a lot of these puzzles, rats will swarm around unlit light sources. You can sling or throw flammable items to ignite these sources of light from a safe distance. There are also a few light sources like sticks and bundles of hay that don't last very long. You'll probably find yourself looking ahead and plotting out your course of movement before taking any action, so you don't end up losing light before reaching a safe patch of land. Honestly, these puzzles aren't that deep, and they're mostly pretty samey for a lot of the game, aside from a few good ones that require the assistance of multiple characters. I still found all of them really satisfying upon completion, though. Like stealth, the puzzles are also forgiving. A lot of things that you need to interact with will be highlighted and/or shimmering. By the way, there will be sections of the game where guards will patrol rat-infested areas. These parts combine the stealth and puzzle elements in a cool way. In these sections, you can have a lot of fun with putting out fires with your extinguish alchemy item, or knocking out a guard's lantern. Removing these light sources will result in the rat horde swarming any nearby enemies not in direct torchlight, absolutely devouring them in the process. So not only are you lighting your way to safety, but you're also putting it out behind you to deal with your pursuers. Also, corpses distract rats, so you can use these moments to escape the horde unnoticed. As you get further into the game, you'll be given more items from characters you come across. One of the slightly deeper gameplay items to use is the acid you can throw on a guard's helmet that forces him to remove it, opening him up for a one-shot kill. It's interesting because at the start of the game, I viewed the sling as more of a tool for solving puzzles and getting past the guards. At the halfway point, I unlocked a sling upgrade that made it no longer make noise. What I once viewed as a simple tool suddenly became a very deadly weapon. My quiet trickster playstyle quickly changed to a silent, cold, and calculated killing machine, using my sling to take out enemies from afar, knocking out torches and lantern lights to call in the rats on unsuspecting guards. I'll be honest with you guys though, as soon as I got this upgrade, the game's difficulty dropped considerably. I did feel very overpowered for the rest of the game, resulting in very flowchart-like combat encounters. My strategy for taking down guards never really changed after this either. While I was still having a great time, this kind of thing isn't the best for encouraging the player to adopt different tactics when given new items later in the game. I didn't feel the need to try new things when I was clearing out groups of enemies in just a few seconds with my current tactics. Admittedly, this is a minor complaint, but I felt it was important to bring this up. Oh yeah, this game has a light crafting and upgrade system. There's not much to talk about here. You can craft items and ammo for your sling in real time, and you can improve your gear at workbenches scattered throughout the game. Like I mentioned, these gear upgrades make Amicia more powerful, like the silent sling upgrade. There's even an upgrade that removes the workbench part of the process, so you can upgrade on the go, which is very convenient. You'll find a lot of these crafting materials out in the open and hidden in almost every level. So when you play this game, make sure you look around and explore the environment fully before moving on with your current objectives. There are also a few boss encounters that I thought were all very good. One of the bosses in particular reminded me of Darknut from the Zelda games. You fight a completely armored up guy that moves really slowly. You have to dodge and maneuver around him and use your sling to break away his armor. Doing this makes him more vulnerable, but also much faster, resulting in him running after you for the remainder of the fight. I thought this part was really cool, and it demonstrates Amicia's abilities perfectly. Like, it makes sense that a young girl would approach this situation in this way instead of it being a straight-up battle. The other bosses are all spoilery, so I won't talk about them. Once again, they were all very unique and good, like this boss was. So you might be thinking, since Amicia's little brother Hugo is with her for most of the game, is he annoying or is he a fine traveling companion? I'm happy to say that even though most of the chapters are you escorting Hugo around, the game does not feel like an escort mission at all. Once Amicia holds Hugo's hand, they basically become a single entity. Like, Hugo turns with you, crouches at the same time, and matches your speed while running. He is thankfully not an inconvenience. The few times he does get spotted or when you have to chase after him during story events, it's not obnoxious or annoying. The devs did a great job at making Hugo not get in the way at all. Hugo isn't like Ellie or Atreus tier when it comes to video game kids that help you during the gameplay, but him just staying out of the way and being cute is all I can ask for when having to deal with a child in a video game. Overall, I'd say the gameplay in Plague Tale is great. It's very linear for most of its runtime, but at the halfway point, the game starts introducing more open levels with multiple paths and hidden areas with items and collectibles to find. The stealth is fairly basic, but also very satisfying, and this title's rat tech is really impressive and helps vary up some of the late game human enemy encounters. Plague Tale is definitely one of those play it for the experience type of games. I read that the devs took inspiration from The Last of Us and the indie game Brothers, and those influences totally show in both the gameplay and story. Which, by the way, the final thing I'll be talking about today is this game's story. I won't be going into spoilers, I'll just be giving my feelings on the story and characters overall. So, like most stories that involve children in terrible situations, Plague Tale's story is about these characters losing their innocence. At the start of the game, Amicia is very bright-eyed and full of energy. This is taken away from her as she escapes the Inquisition that's destroying her home. Watching her father get killed and leaving her mother behind, Amicia has to be strong for Hugo. For whatever reason, these soldiers are looking for him specifically, and they will not stop until they find him. Amicia and Hugo's relationship evolves as the game goes on, as you'd expect. The two will sometimes argue and tensions will rise, but for the most part, Amicia does a really good job at looking out for her little brother. I found Hugo to be very nice, and seeing him ask a bunch of questions about his surroundings is very cute. You have to keep in mind that most of his life has been spent indoors because of his mysterious illness. So a lot of his field dialogue is very fish out of water type stuff. As you progress through the game, you'll meet a variety of characters who are in similar situations to both of our main characters. Other kids whose parents have also fallen victim to the constant rat death and warring going on. Each supporting character is a familiar archetype that we've all seen in other orphan, kids on the run type media like this. You've got your nerdy kid who makes you new gadgets, a blacksmith's son who's the muscle of the group, and two siblings who are thieves that know how to get around. All of these characters get their time to shine in both the cutscenes and the gameplay, and there are missions where each of them will help you out with getting around enemies and solving puzzles. I will say that two of the characters you don't spend a lot of time with, and as a result, you don't get to know them as much as some of the other kids. And without spoiling anything, their screen time is pretty limited because of this. At certain points in the story, it kind of felt like the writers were saying to themselves, okay, how do we get rid of this person? Some of the kids are clearly not needed in the story as much as the other characters are. It's not terrible, but it's noticeable. I should mention that all of the voice acting is really good too. Every character is well acted and sounds great. From what I could tell by the credits, it seems like most of the main characters are actually French, so that explains why they all had clear, good French accents. I really like when we get good child actors in our media. There's a lot of environmental storytelling going on too, thanks to this game looking downright amazing. While exploring towns and cities, you'll come across things like houses and sometimes full neighborhoods that have been burnt down. You'll see white crosses painted on doors and walls, warning any unaware travelers that the plague has been through this area. It's really neat and adds a lot of character to the environments you'll be exploring. This title is based on real historical events, and most of the environments reflect this realism, but there are also some areas and character designs that are highly stylized. Cathedrals and cities can look like matte paintings straight out of other medieval fantasy media. One of the standouts for me was the forgotten battlefield covered in dead bodies. It's really cool looking but disturbing, having to walk over hundreds of dead people while escorting your little brother around. It's super creepy. The leader of the Inquisition looks like a Dark Souls character. I like it because his armor makes him look scary, and this heightens his presence in the story as a persistent force hunting you down. While I think the environments and overall art direction is fantastic, the character models, specifically their faces, sometimes don't animate that well in a bunch of the cutscenes. They reminded me of like Dragon Age characters. The eyes can be very dead looking at times, and the faces very still. During some of the story's more emotional moments, the dead eyes and blank faces really took me out of the experience. I should say though that most of the cutscenes that have close-ups on the characters talking look really good, but there are still parts where the animation quality would drop, and it would make the scene look weird as a result. With that being said, I think Plague Tale's story is really cool. It's a unique take on real-world ancient history that we don't see in a lot of video games. The idea of a rat plague ravaging the countryside while being chased by a human threat is intense and makes you feel hopeless in the beginning, but then awesome when you overcome later on. Also, they do some exciting things later in the game with the rats. The story definitely goes to some pretty crazy places. A good type of crazy. A Plague Tale is a game I wasn't expecting. What I thought was going to be a simple rat survival horror game turned out to be a very enjoyable 10-hour, story-focused stealth experience with cool characters and great gameplay. This title isn't really a horror game, but there's still a lot of fairly disturbing imagery that will probably have you on the edge of your seat. If you're into slower, cinematic titles like The Last of Us, then you'll probably have a great time playing Plague Tale. If you're interested, the game is available on PS4, PC, and Xbox One. The PC version is $40 and $50 on console. If you're itching for an interesting and beautiful looking game about overcoming impossible odds, and maybe petting some rats in the meantime, then check out A Plague Tale: Innocence. Hey guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. It's fun talking about newer games. Every once in a while, I need a refresher video like this one, so I can space out the classics you guys want to see. If you like this video, please consider subscribing and checking out my Patreon link down in the description. You can support this channel for as little as $1 per month, and also get a bonus show called Inside the Sphere, which is an unscripted video series where I talk video game news and what I've been up to. Anyway, it's been fun talking to you all today, and I will see you in my next video. Later.